what about really quickly? What about the cheese and eggs? The meat,
that's a good question.
That's a good question.
And I think I know your answers, but I want to hear it. Like I love if you allowed us when we were in January when we were going through that month, if you had allowed us to still have like a nice omelet with some cheese in it.
Yep.
Man, I probably would have been like, this is pretty good. Like I could do bean omelets.
I could do that forever.
You know what I'm saying? For
forever.
lunch, we could do some eggs and shit like that.
Yeah.
And so now it's almost like you move into this like even grayer area. We don't want to eat meat because you're killing animals. Okay, so we stop that. But now we also don't want you to eat stuff
the
that's
byproduct
produced with them. And so then it's like, all right, so not only do we not want to kill the animals, but we also don't really want to bother them because like, you know, they should be just moving around having their grass and like just like, you know, if they want to watch a flick, like that kind of stuff. You know?
I thought the same thing for a long time. That's why I was vegetarian for a long time first. It's very clear to connect with meat that has been cut off an animal's body. You know they suffered, you know they died. Yeah. When it comes to eggs and dairy, the industries are at least as cruel. The dairy industry, for example, the cows, they don't just give milk naturally. You know, naturally, yes, but they don't just always give milk. Just like a human, they need to be pregnant or have recently given birth. For that to happen, for us to get this milk, they put them into a box, which is commonly referred to as a rape rack. A human will shove their arm deep inside the cow's anus to maneuver her cervix and inject her vagina with bull semen. And we know what we would call that if we had a human in there. So these animals, they obviously don't want that to happen. That's why they're stuck in this small box so that they can put this procedure on them. They kick, they bark, they don't want it. They have a 9-month pregnancy like a human. They give birth. When they give birth, the humans want to drink the milk. Obviously, they don't want the babies drinking it. So they separate the mothers from the babies, which I've seen in real time in a dairy in Israel. A guy brought a wheelbarrow in. He threw the baby in there. He wheeled the baby out, and this mother was hot on his heels, man, trying to chase. And she started bellowing and crying, which they often do for days, pointing in the same direction they last saw their baby. They're very maternal animals. The baby boys are seen as a waste product because they'll never produce milk. So they get sent to the slaughterhouse almost immediately. At the slaughterhouse, the most humane method is to put a bolt gun to their head. It fires a metal bolt through their skull into their brain that stuns them. And then they're either opened up, like their body, their neck is sort of opened up on a table, or they're hung upside down, and then they get stabbed in the throat. They move the knife around and they cut their throat open and they bleed out. That's the baby boys.
This is terrifying.
This fucked up, man. It doesn't get much worse than this shit. Then the sisters of those baby boys, when they're old enough, they're impregnated, and then they are also used as a milk slave. That's their entire life. For 5 to 7 years is as long as they can last. They hook them up to these machines. They take their milk. There's pus in this shit. There's all the hormones. There's all the cruelty. And then every year they repeat this process of re-impregnating them, taking their babies again. 5 to 7 years is all they can do.
Shit's fucked.
Then they fucking send them to the slaughterhouse, and these cows, man, they can live 20, 25 years. So they're just severely, like used like machines, basically.
Yo.
Egg industry is just the same.
Yep.
Those little baby chicks, those little cute little yellow chicks, all the boys, they're sent into a machine called a macerator, which is like a blender. Mm-hmm. They drop off a conveyor belt into this machine that just literally shreds them to pieces. If you could imagine if it was you, that there was this big machine and you got dropped into it and it shred you into pieces, man. Like that's, what the fuck?
Yeah,
that is like a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
That's like horror movie shit. And that's how you get eggs. You buy the eggs. That's what happens. You shred little baby chicks. So for me to stop eating eggs, I started thinking, all right, if I'm going to eat eggs, I'm going to imagine throwing a little baby chick into a blender. I can't do that. I'll just have tofu scramble instead. It's got all the protein, tastes the same, super easy to make, cheaper, and none of the cholesterol and none of the baby chick shredding.
So it sucks. It sucks that you have to be so graphic and real to really understand what's happening, man. Because it's so much easier to. No, it's necessary. And
it is, man. And do you know
100%, because it's so easy to ignore it. It's so, but when you say what you're saying, I'm like,
Do you know what though, man? I fucking hate saying it because it doesn't even anywhere near do it justice. Like even if I show it to you,
I believe you.
Even if I show it to you, that doesn't do it justice either. Like what we really need to do is imagine feeling it. And that's basically impossible to do because we're so privileged. We've never really suffered, most of us, in our lives. So even to try to connect and understand and have empathy for their suffering, it's on such another level that you don't even comprehend it at all, basically.
What if you are someone who can understand what these animals are going through? I mean, that's even a reach to even try to get close. But like, there's a lot of people in third world countries who are suffering, and again, not even close to what the animals that you're describing, what they're going through. But you know, what are the vegan statistics in the middle of Africa, in the Philippines? Like, I mean, is it prominent there? Are they still?
I assume that it's less prominent. You know, the benefit of what we've got here is we've got the education. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these third world countries though are on a plant-based diet by default because it's just cheaper. But I don't know the statistics. I know the vegan movement's sort of happening worldwide, you know, at a different level in different places. But
that's where the China study came from.
Yeah.
Is that they weren't studying like all vegans. They were just studying the majority of the diet, if I'm not mistaken. So like when you look at Okinawa, for example, they still eat seafood, but their average age that they live to is 100, like average. Yeah. So they're eating primarily like sweet potatoes and like a mix of vegetables. So I think there's certain areas though, like, you know, sub-Saharan areas where like they eat raw meat. They don't even cook the meat. And so I think you're able to get a lot more nutrients from eating raw meat than you are it being processed in a factory.
I think that it does help to have had an experience of suffering, which most of us have. You know, like for example, it's much easier for mothers, I've found, to relate to dairy cows because they know what mastitis feels like, which is the painful udder infection that cows get. You know, women can get that as well. And they imagine what it would be like to have their baby taken from them and to have this process go. That's actually a short documentary called, I think it's called The Herd, which is basically that whole concept of humans being used for their milk. And that's always a good way to think of it. Like, what if it was humans in this situation? How would I feel about it? That helps me a lot to sort of navigate through, you know, trying to make good choices.
It seems extreme. Like when you were saying that at first, it sounds extreme, but then, you know, I try to like take myself back to if I was living like just, you know, 80 years ago during the Holocaust, like, and I knew that was going on, I'd be like, yo, like, let's go over there and like end this shit.